disappears.
Let me thank our sponsor once again, Singer Financial, your source for hard money loans in the greater Philadelphia area. And that bumper music was Rex Harrison as Henry Higgins in the movie version of My Fair Lady singing Why Can't the English Teach Their Children How to Speak? And that relates to our next guest. We're going to be light from this point on in the show. Our next guest is the producing artistic director at Act II Playhouse in Ambler, and he's really one of the premier performers of the Philadelphia area. It's Tony Braithwaite. He has numerous Barrymore nominations, and he's won, I think, 5 of them, or maybe 2 or 3. I don't remember the exact number. I should have written it down. But, Tony, it's a pleasure to have you on, and you're going to be starring in My Fair Lady starting tonight at Act II Theater, and thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Tony.
You're most welcome. Happy to be here.
Well, this is one of the premier characters in one of the premier musicals of all time, and it must be pretty exciting even for someone who's gotten as many accolades as you have.
Yeah, and for a neurotic, accolades and validation really are oxygen, so there's never really enough, as it were.
Yeah.
My Fair Lady is particularly exciting because it's the biggest show Act II has done in terms of its scope and cast members. We have 11 people in it, and we're sort of, as you know, reimagining it for our intimate stage.
Yeah, tell us how you're doing that.
The idea, I think, was that to do essentially Pygmalion with music, in that we're really focusing on telling the story of Henry Higgins and Eliza Doolittle, and have them played a little bit differently than what people might remember, and not to be too broad in its scope, but be more intimate and see how we can focus on these relationships and this story, and sort of have a gifted ensemble we've got who's, they're rotating through various roles, and, we have multi-purpose set pieces that, 4 benches are used in the show, and at one minute they're the bleachers in Ascot, the next minute they're the shelves in Higgins' study, and the next minute they're something else, a lot of sort of transformative set pieces in that regard. And
Tony?
Yes.
Hi, Sharon Geller here. I just wanted to ask you, are you taking any liberties with the relationship between Eliza Doolittle and the professor? Are you taking it to another level, or are you basically giving us what's in the original story?
First of all, hi, Sharon. It's great to be talking with you, too.
Thanks.
I think what we're doing is sort of true to the spirit of My Fair Lady. In his intro to the script, Alan J. Lerner says that George Bernard Shaw very much thought that Henry and Eliza should not get together. And in his intro to My Fair Lady, Alan J. Lerner says, "Shaw and heaven forbid me. I don't think he's right." And so taking our cue from that and from the ending where she does indeed, come back to him. No lines have been changed, if you will, but the staging will probably not be exactly what people necessarily remember, and that's kind of the joy of theater, as you well know, to sort of take liberties where you can without destroying the truth of the material.
And with musical theater, of course, it's more than anything else about the songs, at least in my opinion. And I'm curious, what are your favorite of the Henry Higgins songs and the songs in the show in general?
I think what's sort of, I'll answer it, I guess, in a roundabout way, which is Bud Martin, our director, has, and Sonny Leo, our music director, have been very interested in exploring the notion of having me sing as Higgins a lot more than Rex Harrison sang. Rex Harrison sort of famously sang, if you will, because he didn't have a terrific singing voice. But it is written, there are notes there to be sung.
And you can sing.
Well, I hope so. On a good night, maybe.
You were good in the Big Bang at Kimmel a few months ago. That was great.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. So what I'm enjoying, sort of what favorite number, it's really more so like the idea that I'm forced in, I think in a good way, and maybe the audience will be too, to hear these songs differently than maybe they have heard them before, just because we're being a little truer to the actual note-for-note score. Not everywhere, and there's some parts where Rex was spot on and speaking a line here, a line there, but for the most part, I'm singing.
Although you might have to change the lyrics to, the snow, stays mainly in western Pennsylvania.
Yes, right. It's sort of the post-Al Gore, My Fair Lady.
I think our next guest is actually on the line, and she's an actress. She's Kim Carson, and she's one of the great ones in the Philadelphia area, too, and I'm sure she has some opinions. So, Tony, do you mind if we add her to the conversation?
Not at all. I'm a big fan of Kim's.
Hey, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Before we get to what you do, we want to spend a little more time with Tony Braithwaite. What are your thoughts? Are you a big fan of My Fair Lady?
I love My Fair Lady, and I love Tony Braithwaite, so it's a great combination.
What are your favorite songs, aspects of the show, and have you ever been in a version of it?
I haven't been in a version of it, but I'm pretty familiar with it. It is one of my favorites. I love I Could Have Danced All Night. I love Without You, The Rain in Spain, all that. It's just one is better than the next.
What question are you most curious about in terms of the Act II production, which no one has seen to this point?
I am incredibly intrigued by how they're going to do such a traditionally large musical in a little space. I'm really excited how that puts the focus on the characters.
Yeah, well, we touched on that, and I think that tends to be a common question on people's minds, and that's a big reason people will want to go even if they've seen it numerous times before. Absolutely.
I imagine it's going to be very different from anything we've seen as far as My Fair Lady goes in the past.
Tony, let me ask you a question. We talked about Henry and Eliza's relationship. What do you make of Henry and Pickering's relationship? It's always strange that, a middle-aged guy just comes based on a bet and starts living with Henry for a few weeks. Am I wrong there?
Right, and there are some productions that sort of, whether intentional or not, make it seem like the central love relationship is between Higgins and Pickering.
I can see that.
And I think it lives in that same world of the gentleman of that era, like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson live in the same kind of world. And we looked at the you mentioned the middle age component, which is sort of a terrifying term for me now that I'm 40 years old. And we looked at the scripted. Eliza is scripted to be 21. In My Fair Lady, Higgins is not scripted to be any age. Everybody thinks of him as middle 50s because of Rex Harrison. Shaw lists him in the original Pygmalion as, and I just found this out the other day, believe it or not, as 40. And it's I am 40. So it's ironic that Alan J. Lerner and Fritz Lowe wanted to play up the love story, and yet they cast an actor so much older than Eliza. George Bernard Shaw did not, and yet they were much closer in age.
I think I saw it with Richard Chamberlain, who was way older than 40 on Broadway, maybe about 15, 20 years ago.
I saw the same production. It was that kind of eclectic production. They had big skulls everywhere, I remember. It was like this theme of the human head or something. It was bizarre.
You know what? What's your take on, there are some real over-the-top, for anyone who hasn't seen it, what would be called sexist songs, but they're so over-the-top that they're really not. Anything you're going to add to A Hymn to Him or to Ordinary Man?
Yeah, it's interesting because they do pop in a way. My hope is that sort of exactly what you said, Adam, and also sort of in a post-Mad Men world, I think we can accept some of these views from other eras with a sense of irony and not feel that they're intruding on our current values, or that our current values, we will lose them if we even take a peek at some of these other eras and styles and what they might have espoused. That having been said, there's no way around it. These lyrics are what they are. And from my standpoint as Henry Higgins, I think especially A Hymn to Him is his absolute defense. I mean, it's sort of like he doth protest too much, methinks. The more he tells us he doesn't need a woman in his life, the more we start to believe he does need a woman in his life.
Great point.
Tony, I agree with you because a few weeks ago I saw West Side Story, and I totally didn't feel that was dated, even though we have gangs doing tourgetés and saying daddy-o. And, I mean, of course it takes liberties, and I agree with you. It's a different era. Different mores were accepted, and it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the show, which, of course, is a classic.
Exactly, yeah. Now, that having been said, I'm sure a critic or two will kill us. I'm thinking of some in particular whose names I won't mention for not being of the moment, of the now. Why would they do this with these values? But, Sharon, my opinion is very much your own.
Right.
Tony, I have to ask a practical but boring question. I saw on the website that a lot of shows are already sold out. Is it pretty imperative that anyone who wants to see this sort of get on the ball right now and buy tickets?
Well, to an incoming producing artistic director, that is not a boring question at all. It's quite a thrilling one. We're doing real well, ticket sales, and I do think people, if they want to, especially if they want to get like seats together or seats on a weekend, should act pretty soon. We are extended to June 3rd, and a little bird tells me that may go further. But for now, we're officially till June 3rd. And so, yeah, people should act probably fast to get good seats.
Any final thoughts? And you can stay on the line while we talk to Kim Carson, but I know you have it doesn't open, but it starts previews tonight, so you may be quite busy, and we're appreciative of how generous you're being with your time.
And I appreciate the time as well. We at 2:00 we're going to go over set changes and some lighting cues, because Sunday night when we did an invited dress rehearsal for a handful of folks from another nonprofit, the lights went out in the storms that we had Sunday night. And it was right at the moment where we finished Rain in Spain. So it was rain and dance, Olay.
It was a bad rainstorm. You can explain that away. Come on.
Exactly. It couldn't have been better time. So we've got to go back and now look at a bunch of cues that we weren't able to, because then the lighting was all kerflooey after that. Well, so we're going to spend the day on lighting.
All right. Well, Tony, you're welcome to stay on if you have the time.
Thank you. I think I probably have to bolt, but have a wonderful time with Kim, as anyone does when they're with Kim.
All right. Break a leg.
Okay,
Bye,
Tony. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Now we have on, and she's been on for a while, and thanks for being part of the last segment, Kim Carson, who's also one of the real greats, great performers in the Philadelphia area or anywhere.